Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Put Me on Production, Destroy a Work Culture and Watch Me Chill on a Couch Doing Nothing and You Can't Do Anything About It. I worked graveyards in a large furniture warehouse preparing furniture for the driver's next day deliveries. Each prepper was responsible for prepping 2 bays for delivery. To prep the furniture, we would unbox all furniture, put feet on couches, hardware on dressers, build dining room chairs and make repairs. The culture was to prep your bay, and when you finished you helped the next bay and snowballed until everyone was finished, and then you would hop on a cherry picker to get last-minute additions or replace damaged furniture. This place decided to implement a production standard. You were given an allotted amount for each action down to the nut and bolt. If you added up your allotted time and you finished early, you got a 10-cent an hour bonus equaling 80 cents a day. Also, this was to prevent you from helping other bays as you weren't allotted time for others' work. Malicious compliance. I was efficient and didn't waste any movements. I would blast through my bay, add up all the allotted time and saw that I finished 2 hours earlier than I was allotted. Rather than turn in my sheet and get 80 cents extra for the day, I sat on a comfy couch at the end of my bay and did nothing until my allotted time was up. I remember when the manager drove by and said, "We need you to go help XX and get damages." I just looked at my watch, then at my beautifully prepped bay and said, "I'm still prepping my bay." Put my headphones in and leaned back while he looked completely shocked. There was nothing they could do as I was still on the clock for my bay. I saw it more beneficial to get paid for 2 hours of doing nothing than 80 cents to work my butt off. Next one is titled, Oh, You've Made Me Hourly Instead of Salary Because You're Afraid I'll Stop Selling After I Hit My Commission Cap? Should've just let me stay home. Years ago, I was an inside sales rep for a simultaneously large and tiny company in a niche market. The quotes are because it was at least equally outside sales. I just didn't go outside except to smoke. I've since quit. They had about 50 branches across the country of various sizes. The smallest was literally one guy who processed local orders and used hot shots for delivery. The largest had about 50 employees. I made 6 for my branch. I was literally the first salesman with a background in anything resembling sales that my branch had ever hired. They'd always hired the least socially awkward industry professionals they could prior to me, and they'd had their CSR doing the selling for over a year until I came on, so expectations were high. When they hired me, we had somewhat heated negotiations over the comp plan. It was a $42,000 base salary plus commission with a $56,000 OT and $65,000 cap. I asked what I was meant to do after I hit the cap, to which they replied, "Continue to do your job," as if I wasn't going to have a problem with generating new business for free. I said that I was gonna need a bonus structure beyond the cap if they wanted me to do any more hunting after that point. I made it clear that I'd service my accounts when they called, but I wanted to be clear that they were going to be disappointed if they expected me to make outbound calls looking for new business after I'd maxed my comp plan, and that I'd definitely enjoy the extra time at home with my family over the holidays. They said they understood, and we went through the onboarding. I worked almost exactly 40 hours for almost 2 months, early October to early December, before I had jury duty and missed a day. My check was about $150 light compared to what it had been, so I complained to payroll. Benefits kicked in at 90 days. That's when I found out I was making $21 per hour and was not, in fact, pulling a salary. Presumably, this was to force me into the office, as we didn't have remote access to the local network that logged our hours, just the ordering, inventory software. I didn't get even a prorated Christmas bonus because that counts as benefits, and you have to work 90 days to receive those. Cue malicious compliance. I discovered that if I left the house 30 minutes earlier, my 80-minute commute would take less than 25, so instead of showing up around 8:30 and chilling in my car for a bit, so I was working at 9. I was there at 7 with the warehouse guy, sending emails. I started working through lunch as I ate at my desk as opposed to burning an hour off campus or in the break room. I didn't even realize I was losing an hour per day to lunch. I also discovered that if I stayed till 6:30, I'd get home by 7, as opposed to leaving a little after 5 and getting home around 6:30. So, I spent an extra 5 hours per week away from home and worked an extra 22 compared to the 35 I was getting paid for before I figured it out. With the OT, I was clocking north of $2,000 more than intended every month, and oddly enough, no one even noticed until the internal auditor verified W-2s and noticed that I made significantly more than the branch manager. I didn't hit my commission cap until late November, so I spent the rest of the year training with the tech and/or warehouse guy. Both stoners. They tried to put me on the same salaried comp plan I'd originally agreed to, but it was enough of a pay cut to qualify for constructive dismissal, so I got to quit and still collect unemployment for a month before I found another gig. Next one is titled, "He Said I Could, So I Did." This was back in 2019. I was training to become a level 2 swimming teacher, and the guy who ran the courses, we'll call him Bob, asks me to do him a huge favor and work in Scotland for a month as a lifeguard at one of the holiday resorts. I liked the sound of it, and it's also great for me since I'd lost my job about a month prior and could really do with the money. So I go and work there. I do great, amazing experience and fun. They ask me to stay on an extra month. I agree a little begrudgingly, since I have a swimming teacher job offer waiting, but after speaking with them they are okay to wait the extra month. After a couple of weeks they hire a new lifeguard. He causes some trouble with me and I decide that I've had enough and speak to the resort manager about leaving early. Since I wasn't meant to be staying later anyway and they have new lifeguards now, I figured I could go home. After having a chat with him he agrees that it's okay. I try to talk to Bob but he's off on holiday, so I tell his assistant and she says it should all be fine. So, he owes me just over a week of wages, about 120 hours equals £900-ish. When he comes back from his holiday, he tells me he isn't going to pay it because I walked out on the job. I call the resort manager to see if they have paid him for all my work there, and they had. I was steaming. I called Bob and basically told him he had to pay me the money I had earned. He just kept saying, "You walked out, I have the upper hand here, and you can take me to court, but my lawyer says I will win." So I thought, court it is. It had to go through tribunal first, so I took this opportunity to gather my evidence. The holiday resort was on my side, so they were happy to sign all my hours off and send them to me. In that time I realized that I was only asking for wages, and holiday pay was mandatory, not optional. I wasn't expecting any kind of holiday pay beforehand, but since Bob wants me to go through all this trouble to get my basic pay, I may as well go full pelt and ask for holiday pay for the whole month and a half I was there. After speaking to a lawyer, once I had the tribunal certificate, they calculated my missing pay and holiday pay to be equals £1,500. He paid it all to me the day before our court date. Next one is titled, "Sure, let's go over rent." I live with my husband and my good friend in a huge apartment. We have a third bedroom we used as a craft hobby room. This past spring my best friend was going through some hard things at home. His parents found out he was bi and he's part of a very strict religion with no tolerance for the LGBT+ community. So after talking with my housemates we invited him to come live with us. To say he was grateful was an understatement. He cried like big, manly, ribcage-racking sobs. He moved in immediately. The first month was great. I told him I wasn't going to charge him rent the first month because he had moving expenses and his parents were kind of extorting him for money and use of his SUV. The written expectation we all signed was rent, utilities, and the cost of one big meal per day divided by 4. I wrote it all down as rent, $1,800 per 4. Gas and electric, between $100 to $150 per 4. Monthly grocery cost for 4 adults, $400 per 4. Evenly split, $537 per month. He agreed and promised to pay it by the 1st of every month starting in May. Well, as things usually go, that first month was as good as it got. He cooked and cleaned, made me coffee in the mornings, helped take care of my cat and my fish tank, and was always super friendly and understanding. By the end of April, he approached me and said he didn't think he could pay full rent that month. His parents said he owed them $6,000 and they hadn't given him his car back. He was WFH due to the pandemic and just all sorts of trouble. I said no problem, we had been getting along fine without him and he hadn't ever lied to me or given me reason to doubt him. $300 for food and utilities was fine. Things got shitty as they usually do. He kept demanding more of my time to talk about his feelings. Got jealous when I spent time with my husband alone and started asking if I was mad at him, like literally every day. Developed a big crush on our other roommate and tried to woo her and was crushed when she said no. Started eating our private food. Criticizing my way of doing things without offering constructive feedback. The electricity spiked to over $300 because he left his lights and 3 computers on all the time. He causes a $50 overage fee for our Wi-Fi. I asked him to pay the difference and he did, but complained that we needed unlimited internet so he could do his job. I said okay, but he'd be on the hook for the extra charge. Things got worse, but they were still workable. I figured it was just him adjusting to living with other people. In July he sat me down and said we needed to change our rent agreement. He felt he was paying too much for his share and his sister in Arkansas said that his portion was outrageous, and that their household bills were less than $1,400 a month for a mortgage and a family of 5 people. So obviously I was trying to ring him for money. So we went over the bills. Turns out I had made a mistake, he was absolutely right. The correct breakdown should have been: rent, $1,800 per 4, I had typed in $1,600 on my calculator originally. Gas, electric, $320 per 4. Internet, $90 per 4 plus $25 extra for his unlimited high speed. Groceries, $400 per 4. His new monthly payment was $677, I rounded down the change because I'm a good friend. He stayed 3 more months before getting traumatized by my other roommate after she brought a date home and broke his heart. We're still best friends, we just figured that we didn't mesh well living together. Next one is titled, What Happens When Management Makes BS Demands from Engineers. Once upon a time, in a well-known paper mill far away, on a beautiful September morning, the engineering squad was minding its own business, running their checkup rounds on the machinery as usual. As we go back to the office after some morning repairs, our dearest enthusiastic manager hits us with, "Manager, so everybody, good job last quarter, but this time, we want to aim higher and break production record per month." My boss, "Sir, we already produce more than competing paper mills in the region, 1,000 tons more." Manager, "Well, you know what they say about setting the bar even higher." Boss and engineering squad in unison, "But sir, the machine is already working at max operational speeds, beyond this." Manager, "Figure it out." Now, if you all don't know, there are a few things you never want to make a machine do. One of them is pushing it to the designed limits, as you risk various forms of failure and extreme vibration, but since management threatened to fire some technicians if we don't meet their criteria, we complied. Flash forward September 30th, we are about to hit the record. Management is already preparing celebrations, news agencies are on site to report the achievement as the company is considered a pillar in our economy. And you probably know what happens next. After over 7 reports from us to management telling them that we are running the mill at a huge risk of a fire and them threatening us with our jobs just so they can brag in front of the CEO. A fire started around the main machine, we lost over $500,000 in equipment and 2 technicians suffered from 3rd to 1st degree burns. We get thrown under the bus initially, but upper management finds the reports in an investigation, which leads to the managers and industrial engineers to be fired and sued for what they did. Next one is titled, No OT Allowed, and Constantly Invade My Personal Time. Okie dokie. I still work for the same company, so I'll be semi-vague with the specifics. Years ago I had a boss that was interesting. He was usually a decent guy to be around, and was good at some of the particulars of the job, but when it came to the day-to-day stuff he was just clueless and/or admittedly didn't care about pitching in since he knew everyone else could cover it. When he wasn't busy, or was stressing about something, he really liked just hanging around and chit-chatting, even if we were very busy or, in my case, on my lunch break. I'd asked him repeatedly not to come find me on my breaks, which I took outside, and talk my ear off as it's the only personal time I get in the day, and I'd really rather not be bothered by anything work-related during. It's important to note that every position in the company below his is hourly. At this point I was a few steps down the ladder from his position. During one of these interruptions he mentions an unpleasant call he just had with his boss, and asks if I want to hear about it. I told him, no, not particularly. I'd like to finish eating, go for a walk, and read for a bit. Then when I come back, clock in, and am an actively working employee, I'd be game to talk about it as much as you'd like. Even when he was either grating on our nerves, or making inappropriate jokes, comments, one thing I'll give him is that we could show some frustrations by making direct comments like that and he'd actually take the hint, sort of, apologize and back off. By the time I came back from break he'd gathered all the FT staff and made a show of how I made them wait. Then he goes on a tirade about OT and how we're not to get a minute of it going forward. This is immediately after his demand we all work open close for the last 2 weeks during our busy season, which is roughly 12 to 13-hour days. Exhausting? Yes, but I relied on that OT for years. We have multiple busy seasons a year, to put into savings as the pay otherwise was okayish. He also routinely asks me to stay a bit past my scheduled time to help with things, so already I'm thinking this could mean I'll be able to make up the potential OT by leaving early on Fridays. Cue malicious compliance. Going forward I start ending my lunch breaks, usually an hour, the moment either he or anyone else finds me for a work-related question. I'll walk back inside, clock in, and then discuss whatever they'd like. I'd then say I'm taking my paid 15 to 20 minute break to go finish my food and take a shorter walk, and wouldn't clock back out again to finish the actual unpaid hour break, since it was interrupted, HR violation, which I documented. I'd always stay after my shift was supposed to end if he or anyone else needed a hand. I was good friends with the delivery folks on our route and they'd start coming later and later to do our pickups to help me pad out my time and claim traffic was getting so bad in the area, since they all thought he was a twat anyway, and I was ostensibly put in charge of deliveries, pickups for some reason. By Thursday evening I'd look at my timesheet and calculate when I need to leave the following day to avoid any OT, which I'd make sure everyone was aware of so there'd be no surprises. Of course they were always surprised when I'd abruptly end a conversation, or stop helping a customer, etc., and just pack up and walk out the door. It got to the point where I'd show up at 7, I was the opening manager, this is retail, no one else would show up until 8:30 to 9, and then I'd be leaving around 10 AM. Eventually I stopped coming in on most Fridays at all, and told the boss he'd have to open as I wasn't willing to come in for literally 1 hour before leaving again, and as I'm well beyond meeting what I need to do to keep FT status I'd just lose that hour, or stay extra late the night before if need be to hit 40 on the dot. It got to a point where he initiated a conversation involving HR on my leaving so early on days we need life at Moonlight, and how I was abusing the system. When the HR rep said this was a fairly serious allegation, and what I had to say in response, I pulled out my notebook with daily breakdowns showing what I actively did during chunks of time, including timestamps for beginning-end, interrupted lunch breaks, and the content of the interruption, extra projects put on me and how that extended my day, etc. They looked it over for all of 3 to 4 minutes before sighing, handing it back, and telling me I could go. Ironically, right after the meeting ended I had to rush to go clock out, or I'd have been on OT and left. That Monday my boss tries to play it off like I got away with it once but don't try it again, but is being very cautious regarding asking for help for things that are his direct responsibility anyway, and only came out one further time to talk to me on lunch before seeing my notebook next to me and sheepishly walking away. The OT ruling came and went for years, so I'd either keep mysteriously racking up extra time to leave early, delayed pickups for our shipments, or would work open close of my own choosing when they randomly decided they didn't care about OT for a few months. Either way, I was never bothered regarding how I fluctuated with my schedule again. Last one is titled, Make Your Dog Stop Barking. Before I start, my dog is a cute, quiet, nice Labrador that never causes trouble. So we live in an apartment complex. I am at the second floor of the apartment complex and the dog owner of the black dog is at the first one. I am not someone who will get blamed for something he didn't do and take the blame for it. I will always seek justice, and there is one other apartment owner with a dog. It is a dark dog that I can't really get close to. She always barks to me, and whenever I have my dog she goes berserk. I swear she barks at anyone and everything. So one day, I get a knock at my door. It is an angry neighbor, and he complains about how my dog won't stop barking and how irresponsible I am to not stop my dog from barking. So I try to explain to him how I am not the one to blame and my dog is quiet all the time, that she almost never barks. I get cut off after that point and he starts his whole sermon. I don't remember much of it, but I remember how he said at the end this, make your dog stop barking. I answer, okay, I will see what I can do. That got him to stop, and when he left, I went to ask a friend to help me with my plan to stop my neighbor from blaming everything on my poor dog. So a friend of mine took my dog for the day to their home and I put a hidden camera showing the other dog barking the whole day and also put 3 of them at my apartment and I waited for the next day. The revenge was sweet, so I stayed at my apartment for a day without my dog. It was worth it when I heard a knock at the door and it was the angry neighbor. This time I opened the door. I had made the sofa for him to sit down and invited him in. I made him some coffee and showed him the recording. He was shocked that it wasn't my dog but his brother's. Yes, I learned that right away when he saw the video. He said that he was sorry to cause me such a havoc and I answered that he should probably double check next time. The next day we met at my apartment and thought about how to make the dog stop barking at everyone. He also told me that his brother is gone the whole day. He comes back at midnight and leaves right when the sun rises. We already had a disadvantage against the dog. The next day I went up to approach him and he barked, but I kept going. I let the dog smell my hand before approaching further. It is recommended not going close to the dog before she trusts you. The dog actually smelled my hand and let me approach and I pet her. It seems like dog neglect at that moment, since the dog actually wasn't trying to scare us away but wanting attention. I asked the dog owner's brother if I should. He said that he would try to fix it. The day after, the dog was gone, and so I asked what happened to the dog. The neighbor said that his brother gave the dog to his niece because he couldn't take care of it, and though the dog deserved better. Well, at the very least the dog was all right now. I visit the niece's home and let our dogs play. Thanks for listening.